Okay, hello MTAV 102s. This is our next topic. I sent you these notes the other day. I apologize that I scanned them in the wrong order. So the cover page is kind of between page 2 and 3 or something, I think. But anyway, the pages are all there, even if they're in the wrong order. Sorry. Now, before I start with this topic, pivot chord modulation, I just want to say that I'm growing increasingly concerned that I have so little contact with you guys and that you are not really communicating your problems with me. But I'm assuming that there are problems because I've only received one assignment 2 thus far, and the due date has come and gone. So seeing as we've gone down to lockdown level 1, I've been thinking that perhaps we should return to mask sessions and we can have some revision sessions this week. So I'm hoping that you will all attend during the lecture times, that is Tuesday and Friday, when we would normally have MTA V1 lectures, that you will come to room LG04 and then we can revise the ornamental chords we've done last term, and we can also then do some examples of these in person to help you with that as well. So what I'm going to do now is simply go over the notes with you, and then when I see you in the week, I'm going to give you an assignment for pivot chord modulation, and I'm going to do an example with you in the class. All right? So what is modulation, first of all? Modulation means that the home key, the tonic key or the home key, is seldom maintained in a piece of any substance from the beginning to the end. Few compositions of any substantial scope remain in the tonic key or the home key throughout. In the course of such a composition, the music will temporarily abandon the tonic or home key. It will pass through one or more subsidiary. Subsidiary means they are not as important as the home key. They are sort of beholden to it, but they will eventually, such music, remember we are basing this on 18th century tonal music, so such music will always return to the home key at the end again. The process by which tonal music passes from one key to another is called modulation. So modulation means how to change key, how to go to another key. Now you get lots of different techniques of modulation. We are only going to be looking at one of these this year, pivot chord modulation. But you get lots of others. So next year in MTAV2, you'll be looking at numerous modulation techniques. And in your third year, you'll be looking at yet others. But for now, we focus only on the idea of the diatonic. Diatonic means it's in the key. It's a chord that's in the key, as opposed to chromatic, which means it's a chord that's not in the key. Okay, we are looking at diatonic pivot chords, and when we are looking at diatonic pivot chords, chords that belong to the keys in question, it means that we are limited as 18th century music. Remember, that's what we are basing our course on, 18th century tonal music. That's our models language for this course. Then such relationships between the home key and the subsidiary keys tend to be limited to what we call closely related keys. So what I've done is given you just a brief summary of what closely related means. It basically means that if you look on page 2, you can see it most clearly in in explanation number 2 at the bottom here, this little diagram. It means that in the circle of fifths, from a given key, and I've circled it now, let's say our example is we're in C major, closely related keys would be the 5 keys that are either a key that has the same key signature, like the relative minor, that is C major and A minor are closely related because they've got exactly the same key signature, or that is one position away in the circle of fifths. From no sharps or flats, you can go to one sharp or flat, one sharp G major, or one sharp E minor, or to the left, one flat F major, one flat D minor. Those 5 keys are closely related to C major. And if you look at them from the point of view of the actual scale of C major, you'll see that it's all the major and minor chords in the key of C major. So apart from the tonic chord of C major, which represents the tonic key or the home key, there's a D minor chord, which is the supertonic minor key that is closely related to C major. There's an E minor chord, which represents the mediant minor key that is closely related to C major. There's an F major chord that represents the subdominant key, which is closely related to C major. There's a G major chord, which represents the closely related dominant key, and there's an A minor chord, which represents the closely related submediant minor key. There is a B diminished chord. Now, there isn't such a thing as a B diminished key, so that tells you there isn't a B something that is closely related to C major. And you can do the same with a pure minor scale. In other words, don't take the raised leading note into consideration. Just look at the key signature of C minor, and there again you would have to cross out the supertonic, which is diminished. There isn't a D diminished key, but there is an E flat major key, there is an F minor key, there is a G minor key, not G major, remember? The pure minor scale. G minor has 2 flats, C minor has 3 flats. They are closely related. There's an A flat major, which is closely related, 3 flats, 4 flats, and there is a B flat major, the subtonic major key, which is closely related to C minor. 2 flats, 3 flats. So they each have 5 closely related keys. So what do you do with that? You go modulation by diatonic pivot chord, bottom of page 3. A pivot chord, what we call a pivot chord, this is the technique of modulation that we're using now, means that it is a key that is a chord that is common to both the initial key, the key before the modulation, and it is also a diatonic chord in the goal key, the key to which you are going. So there's an initial key and there is a goal key. The initial key, and you're going along happily, chords in the initial key, and then you get to a chord in the initial key, which is also a chord in the goal key. And then from that point onwards, that's the pivot chord. It is something in the old key and it's something in the new key. And then you simply from that point carry on in the goal key. That's how a pivot chord modulation works. The point of it being that the transition from one key to another needs to be as gradual as possible so that you don't shock your listener by suddenly changing key. That's the point of it. So what you would do in order to determine how you can find a pivot chord by which to modulate, I've given you the example of, say you were in A major was your initial key and you want to get to B minor. You want to go to its supertonic minor key. So then you would list all the chords that you have in A major. You have an A, and this is where it's important to make sure that you spell the chords correctly. The tonic of a major key is a major chord, A, C sharp, E. Supertonic is a minor chord, B, D, F sharp. Mediant is a minor chord, C sharp, E, G sharp. Subdominant is a major chord, D, F sharp, A. Dominant is a major chord, E, G sharp, B. Submediant is a minor chord, F sharp, A, C sharp. Leading tone is a diminished chord, G sharp, B, D. Then you do the same for B minor. Now remember, you are going to be writing a structural progression in B minor, so now you do take the raised leading note into consideration. So you do take the raised leading note into consideration now. So you do the same for B minor. The tonic of B minor is a B minor chord, B, D, F sharp. The supertonic is a diminished chord, C sharp, E, G. Then we have the structural mediant chord, which is a mediant augmented, D, F sharp, A sharp. But we also have the ornamental mediant. Remember, we did ornamental fourths and ornamental fifths and ornamental thirds. So we had a whole lot of progressions that involved in a minor key, not the augmented mediant chord, but if you were working with ornamental chords, you could have progressions like in a minor key 1, 3 major with a descending scale with an unraised leading 1, 3, 4 or 1, 3, 6, or you could have an ornamental fourth that went 6, I beg your pardon, an ornamental fifth 6, 3, 6 or 6, 3, 4, and so forth. So there were various things you could do with a major mediant in a minor scale, the ornamental use. And in most cases, well, in all cases actually, it would involve a resolution to either the subdominant or the submediant. So if it turned out that whatever this was, let's say we had chosen this one and we said this was A major and we had written a progression and landed up on the subdominant chord D, F sharp, A, and we turned it into B minor's mediant major, then we would now be at this point in B minor on that major mediant chord, which means that the next chord we must write in B minor must be either 6 or 4. Because that's what you do with a major mediant in a minor key. So it is possible to use the major mediant. All right, then we have the subdominant minor chord. We have a dominant major chord, F sharp, A sharp, C sharp. We have a submediant major chord, and we have a leading tone diminished chord, A sharp, C sharp, E. So which of those chords are common, are diatonic in both A major and B minor? There it is. It's that B minor chord. It's chord 2 of A major and it's chord 1 of B minor. The D major chord is chord 4 of A major and it's the mediant major, the ornamental mediant, in B minor. For the rest, you don't have anything that's the same because this one's got a G sharp, this one doesn't, this one's got an A sharp, this one doesn't, and so forth. So there won't be any other common denominators. So that is how you then plan to write your phrase, is you find the common denominator and you write your phrase accordingly. So how it works is you will always start a phrase. This is the musical phrase. Oh, now my pen won't run. Sorry, let me just find another pen. Well, this pen, right. So you will always start your musical phrase in the initial key. You will be writing a progression in the initial key. You will get to the pivot chord, which is one function in the initial key. It's a new function in the goal key. You will indicate the new function and you will continue until you get a cadence in the goal key. So you will start the phrase in the initial key, you will include your pivot chord somewhere, and you will finish with a cadence in the goal key. That's how the modulations work. Okay? So, sorry, here's just another example. It's just one where, in fact, you have more options to choose from between F major and C major, two major keys. So there aren't raised leading notes in minor keys and stuff like that to worry about. So, in fact, you have more things to choose from. And what you should choose, I've written about it over there, the best ones to choose. How do you know what is a good pivot chord to choose? Always go for where have I written it now? This should preferably be a predominant. Let it be a predominant chord in both keys. In other words, the predominant chords are your neutral chords. That is where you have 1 and 6 and 4 and 2. Those 4 chords. Before you get to dominant. That's like the most neutral place for you to leave your old key without making it sound unstable. And it is also the most neutral place for you to link up with your new key and then progress towards the cadence. If I abandon my old key on its dominant, if I leave C major now on that key, on that chord, and I go to, if I leave C major there and I go there, or to another key, or wherever I went, it's a disturbing feeling because I was waiting for the leading note in the old key to resolve. And if I don't resolve it and I simply go to another key at that point, then it's not a gradual and type of transition. It's a disturbing type of transition. So try and find a predominant chord, one of those, to get from your old key to your new key. All right, so the best to do in this case is simply to look at how composers have done it. So as I said, you look at the beginning of the phrase and you look at the end of the phrase, and that's how you know that you've modulated. So here we can clearly hear that we're in A major to begin with. Example 1, we've got 3 sharps. Sorry. There's a so, do in A major. Imperfect authentic cadence. All right, now we start the next phrase in A major again with this. Okay, so by the time we get to the end of this phrase, we started it in A major, but by the time we get to the end, we've got da da da. There's a D sharp and an E, T, do. Can you hear that it's a T, do? And in the bass, so, do. But that's not A major anymore, that's